Yeah, I think with the desire for people to have faith, there's very little space for people to be human.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and unfortunately, we live in a fallen world. So trauma is everywhere. Everybody has it. But the church doesn't know how to talk about trauma without it somehow being overshadowing our faith and what we believe Jesus to be able to do. There's something that I hear oftentimes, and it's not, I wouldn't say that it's a bad thing, but a very common phrase in church is, I don't care what you've been through.
Mm-hmm.
The way that it's usually is packaged in a very powerful sermon. And the point is to say, I don't care what you've been through, God can, right? And depending on where you are in your faith, that can be very encouraging. But I think it speaks of a sentiment that the church has.
Yeah.
I don't care what you've been through, God can. And people need to have a space where I do care what you've been through.
Absolutely.
And God can.
And God can. I love that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So when I think about the church and trauma, I think that people are often torn with proving that they have faith, but also tending to wounds that need to be tended to.
Yeah.
And so what this means is we often gloss over things that need to be talked about, things that might be discussed in therapy, right? Things that might be discussed with a close friend. It needs to be talked about in the context of, like, there's we talk about this in the program, but I think about the story of Job, and the Job's friends sound just like the church very often, because the idea is the righteous don't suffer. Mm-hmm. And some people read Job and think that the friends were right in all of the ways that they question Job. And some people read Job and think Job is right, but Job repents at the end, so Job was not entirely right.
Job is going to be a podcast.
But it all
yes, I said Job is going to be. Huh?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a powerful story.
Yes,
because we can see ourselves in it.
Yeah.
But we often don't see the errors because it is such a reflection of the church. Yes. So we think you're suffering because you did something. You're suffering because
God is trying to teach you something.
God is mad. God is trying to teach you something. And naturally, when we go through seasons of suffering and things like that, we do learn things. We do change. We do evolve. We do become purged. But suffering was in the earth before I was here. I didn't bring this suffering upon myself. Nope. Right? So, but that's what the church, that's the narrative that the church, they're like, is there some sort of sin in your life? And I'm not saying that God is not one to hold us accountable to our sin. But there was a very clear point in time where we are judged for our sin.
Yeah, of course.
And that is in the end. So who are we to determine when God is now judging you?
Absolutely.
Right? It's based on our perception. So when I think about the church and trauma, because we are not well-versed in deliverance, right? Because we are afraid of the ministry, we don't want to scare people off. Mm-hmm. We ignore hardship and the impact that it has and try to teach people into healing. And you cannot always do that. Sometimes you have to minister people into healing. And I mean, that's what Jesus did, right? He ministered to people to that point of healing.
Yes. Say that again. Instead of trying to teach people into healing, we need to minister to people into their healing. Mm-hmm. That is such a great, powerful point, because you are so right. I mean, of